Hello.
Hello, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Oh, not too bad, not too bad. Are you over 18?
Yes.
Awesome, perfect. And you are or are not a Christian?
I'm not a Christian. I'm actually a pagan, but
Okay.
I am a part of the Satanic Temple and I practice witchcraft.
Okay, I got you. Do you believe in any deities?
Yeah. I am a follower of I'm a Hellenic pagan. Do you know what that is?
Greek?
No.
Oh, okay.
So, Hellenic paganism is when you believe in multiple
Got you.
gods and stuff like that. So, big follower of Aphrodite, Apollo, Hecate, and Lilith.
Okay, alright.
And I really just stick to those four, and I have for the past couple of years. But when I was 13, I I was raised in a very very Christian home. But I had always been curious, and I would ask my parents questions and they could never give me answers. So I decided to venture out and look at other stuff and do my own religion on Christianity. And besides the Bible, which was not written by God, it was written by a man who said God told him all these things. That's the only concrete proof that Christians have about their religion.
Yeah, I would agree. It's a bunch of personal experiences and this text that, was compiled, the Bible. Um I am interested though, so taking the belief in these gods as well, Aphrodite and Apollo and Lilith and stuff. How would you go about demonstrating their existence and your relationship with them?
Demonstrating their existence, the proof of their existence, or
Yeah. How can we go about demonstrating that these are real deities that engage with humankind via these witchcraft practices that you do?
so historically, I feel like the best proof that we could get is the temples that were around that a lot of Greeks used to attend to worship said gods and goddesses. And the stories that we were told, because I feel like sometimes stories have to come from somewhere, unless somebody just made them up. But I guess my faith on them existing is one, the benefits I've got from worshiping and working with them, and just faith.
Okay. Um, to me, that seems not too different than what a Christian or a Muslim would say. Um, that through history and cultures and stuff, we can see the dedication that humankind and different cultures had to worshiping these gods and how they portrayed the worship of them via sacrifices, rituals, and building temples and stuff. And the rest of it is faith, believing that they have personal experiences with them. And so I don't know. Just to me, it seems pretty much the same thing when I hear it from a Christian, when I hear it from a pagan, a Muslim. Uh, what about witchcraft? Is there any way that you can demonstrate that witchcraft actually works? Because I'll be honest, if anything at base level were real, I would hope it be witchcraft because I think that's cool. But
Yeah.
everything that I have tried or looked into hasn't worked. And anyone that I've met or whatever, no one has been able to do anything or show me anything. So how would I go about validating witchcraft?
So, witchcraft, depending on who you're looking at it from, whether it be Africans or people like that who practice different kinds, um the way I think about it and the best way to explain it is we take herbs, or we put manifestations into certain oils, or do a whole bunch of stuff. And with that intent in our mind, we're essentially giving back to the earth and the universe in hopes that it will give us what we desire. Or for like a protection spell, for example, in a lot of Native Americans would use herbs and rituals like music or doing specific things before fights to hopefully keep themselves protected and healthy, or they would do other certain rituals for crops just in hopes that like the universe or the earth would listen back and give them what they need.
Okay. Yes, I can definitely understand the practices of it, and I guess the logic behind it, but is it consistent to the point where it can yield, the said results if we continuously only use these herbs and do it at this time and pray to these gods in these ways? Will we always get, the crops or what we need from the earth, or will we not because we didn't do it correctly or in the right way? Um, is it consistent, or is it just kind of like, well, if we get good crops, the gods were happy, and if we don't, then they just weren't? Is it just kind of like up to interpretation at that point? Do you get what I'm asking?
Yeah, I get what you're asking about the whole like making sure things stay the same, having certain rituals and stuff like that. That's where manifestation and intention come into play. If you are taking these things, which I feel like a big first step into witchcraft, in like my personal opinion, is finding herbs and essentially like telling yourself what you think they would do. Like people would look at lavender and be like, "Oh, that would make you peaceful," or like any herb for that matter. Like if you were to look at red chili peppers, you'd be like, "That's hot. You could use that for like hexes." But there's no right or wrong way to do witchcraft. It's all about how you want it to work out and what you want to happen. And as for the like, if the gods don't do this for me, does that mean that they're mad at me? Not necessarily. Sometimes it could just solely be human error where we are asking for something out of greed instead of like it being a necessity, you know? Like if you're a rich person who practices witchcraft and you're like, I want more money. But like versus somebody who's fighting from living out on the street, who's trying their best to do, and it's what we call an abundance spell, so that they could get it because they need it. But it won't always come the way people imagine it, like, oh, I'm gonna find $1 million on the street, or it's gonna show up under my pillow. Like it comes in funny ways, similar to as like Christians say, like God will come at the right time, he'll give you what you need. Or like if somebody loses their job, they're like, it's God's plan, you know?
Yeah, yeah. I
And
I remember when I was a Christian, it was a big thing for me that if I was in a struggle or was in need of something, to not stress about it, but to surrender it to God. And I think that
yeah.
once I stopped having that belief in God, I was able to easily take that and adapt it into the coping mechanisms that I have now when I get too overwhelmed and too stressed out, that somehow it's just going to be okay. I have a good support
Yeah.
system. I have people that love me, and I know that, I'm a good worker, and at the end of the day, somehow I will be all right. And you know what? Somehow I've always been all right.
Yeah.
And I don't see that to be in any way validating to the existence of God or the credibility of witchcraft or anything like that. Just it's just life, and human beings are resourceful, and even when we seem like we're completely done and out of it, we can find ways. Our brains can find ways to release that stress from us, so we can go forth and actually find the opportunities to get us the resources that we need. That help get us through that moment at that time. But I don't see how that in any way gives any credibility to what, supernatural source some people may credit it for.
Yeah. And so when I talk about witchcraft, that's completely separate from like the paganism. So the spells that I'm doing aren't for those gods or goddesses. I
Okay.
am I think that like the universe is a being. I think there's got to be some source somewhere out there. I'm not the right person to tell anybody like who it is, whether it's God or Buddha or this or that, because I also believe that religion is a manifestation. And if you talk to a Christian after they were like proclaimed dead for a couple of minutes, they're going to tell you that they saw a light and Jesus was standing at the end of it. Or if a Buddhist dies and comes back to life, they're going to tell you that they saw Buddha. And the same goes for every single religion that believes in a different God.
Yeah, and atheists tend to see what their former religion was, which is great because mine's Christianity. So
Yeah.
I'll probably have a hell thing. But there was one. Oh, it was so long ago. I didn't read the book, but I read the like the Spark Notes version of it. And it was about a woman who was an atheist her whole entire life, never held a God belief, and she had a near death experience doing some kind of like the rapids with the water and the kayak or whatever. She
Yeah.
she hit her head on one of the rocks and she died. And her near death experience involved her going in, like, she met this heavenly disembodied being who was showing her basically like the world from a spatial view and was explaining to her that you know this was her last chance to find spirituality, because the next time that she comes close to death, like, this is the closest she's ever been, and the next time it's going to be over for real. That she agreed to go to Earth and take this test and this, that, the other thing. It wasn't a god. It wasn't any religion that, was here earthly or whatever. It was a completely different thing. And she wrote a book about this and, her journey into being spiritual. And I think it's very fascinating, the kind of things that the brain will produce in those moments. And I can definitely see why, for a lot of people, that's what the brain does to comfort them in those, potentially panicking and, dying moments. So I can see why a Christian would see, Jesus, or why Muslim would see Allah, or, anything like that. To me, it makes sense
Yeah.
from that perspective.
Yeah, no, totally. Because scientifically speaking, 7 minutes after death, there's still brain activity. So it's just gonna make some stuff up, make you think that you're seeing things, this, and that. But I don't know. I think a lot of religions were made up by man because they couldn't understand the concept of death and they couldn't understand what like came after it. So my thing about Christianity is that like one day this dude was like probably laying in his house made of straw thinking about what was going to happen when he died, and he decided that he would make up a god for him to worship so that he would feel more at peace. And if you are in a group small enough in the middle of a country that like inhabits not that many people, if you tell somebody that's like convincing enough about a god, they would probably believe you. The same way cults are made.
So,
And then
as someone who believes in multiple deities, do you think that the biblical God is made up, or do you think that God is real, just maybe not in the form that the Bible portrays?
I couldn't tell you. I mean, it's not like I was there. If he is real, then that sucks and I'm set up like to burn in hell after I die. I'm damned for the rest of my dead life. But I also don't think that he would be the only one. And even if he was the only one and I knew about it, I wouldn't necessarily want to worship him anyways.
Right.
Because I wouldn't say the most, there's a lot of them, but he's one of the most narcissistic gods that you could ever worship.
Right. And I agree. But it's the original like myths and stuff surrounding Yahweh of the Bible originated in old Canaanite mythology, where he was part of a pantheon and he wasn't even the top god. He was one of the lesser gods, actually. And it wasn't until his father, who was the god of gods, divided the world, the people of the world, amongst his sons, and Yahweh got Israel. And Yahweh, wanting to take over, pretty much had his people make war with his siblings' people, and thus all these, issues of, well, these people are now going to war because their God is telling them to go do it. So I could see, because, the Bible starts off with the Jewish perspective and then goes on to opening it up to the Gentiles. It just seems like a ripoff of a ripoff of a ripoff until we get back to the older Canaanite myths where Yahweh is just part of a pantheon. There's many of them, and he is just one of the lesser gods. He's a storm and war god, so his violence makes complete sense. His ego makes sense. And so I would think that if we were to look at the original stories of who this god was, would we, not we, but I guess from the perspective of someone who believes that there are multiple gods, would maybe that version of Yahweh, the original version of him, be something that you would see as potentially being real or not really?
Yeah, I believe that could be real, definitely. Sounds like I haven't done a whole lot of reading about that certain kind of stuff. But I mean, it checks out like really well because he makes it seem like in the Bible, because I was a Christian for 13 years and I mentioned that earlier, but when I tell you I was like the least devoted Christian there could have ever been, I mean it like wholeheartedly. I was never interested in it. It just didn't make sense to me. And nobody could answer the questions that I had. So I was like, okay, you guys suck. I'm doing my own thing. And if you don't like it, whatever. But, I mean, so where do you do all your research at? What do you look at?
So it's a lot of sources. I read different books. I try to expand what I read. I'm going through the Quran right now. I have some books on witchcraft on my desk downstairs, and I've got different biblical commentaries and books too, and both for and against Christianity that I read. Both by Sam Harris, Frank Turek, J. Warner Wallace, people like that. And then I also listen to a lot of debates from different perspectives, like on modern day debates on YouTube. And I have been really interested recently in watching one specific channel called Mindshift. Mindshift is run by a guy named Brandon, and he is no longer a believer. He's an atheist now, but he goes through the Bible and does deep dives into so many different stories, things that even today, he's opening my eyes to things that I've never even thought of before. And I learned the Epic of Gilgamesh. I learned by watching through one of his videos, and it inspired me to get the audiobook so I can hear it. All kinds of cool things that I think you can find from watching specific people online and listening to debates from different perspectives, different religions. And then there's some people on here that I think are really great to talk to when it comes to Islam or Christianity, like Justin Deconstruction Zone. I think he's incredibly knowledgeable. He went to school for all of this. Dan McClellan also makes some pretty good points. Yeah, so it's a bunch of places.
Yeah, because I am really interested in learning about like your point of view as to why you like turned away from Christianity and what really set in stone like your atheism and stuff like that. But I have a question, and if you don't want to like answer it, that's fine. But did you ever like partake in anything else, any other religions before you became an atheist, or did you just go from like straight from Christianity to atheism?
Yeah, that's a good question. When I decided that I could call myself not a Christian anymore, it wasn't like I just made the jump straight to atheism, because that was something that I was like, well, there's still got to be something, right? There's got to be, maybe it's still this God, just maybe not the way that I thought, And so
Yeah.
I tried to look at different denominations of Christianity. I was more of a mix, I'd say, between a Baptist and a Pentecostal. So I opened it up to, evangelical, and, I even looked at Jehovah Witness for a while. And the more I, kind of went rippled out of Christianity, started looking into more spiritual things, I finally told myself the demons weren't going to get me. And I went and I, looked at the crystal shops and stuff like that. And I got some of their
Mm-hmm.
literature, and was reading it, and reading different things about spell work, and the goddess, and returning things to the earth, things of that nature. I found certain cultures from paganism to be amazing. I am still greatly inspired and pulled towards Norse paganism specifically. I like a lot of their myths and stories. Obviously, I do consider this to be a great deal from, oh, biblical scholarship. Thank you. It's great to see you. And I do take this to be deeply rooted from my indoctrination into Christianity, but I am deeply attracted to and love the concepts and portrayals of Jesus' sacrifice, as well as the sacrifice of Odin. Both of them, sacrificing them, a part of themselves, being gods, and technically not having to do so, yet doing so to either save the world or to pursue wisdom and stuff like that, because with that wisdom, Odin did a lot of good things. Granted, a lot of bad things too, but a lot of good things. And so, but I just didn't believe in them, and I couldn't get myself to just believe in them. I saw them
Yeah.
just as stories, and I wasn't gonna lie and say that I, believed in Odin or somebody else or anything like that. So it just got down to the point where I had to ask myself, well, what God do I believe in? Well, none. And then, do I believe in some kind of spirituality thing? And it got to, I don't know, maybe, maybe not. So I couldn't say yes. So that got me to the point where I accepted that I would fit this agnostic atheist label.
Okay. Sick. Cause I have a couple of, actually most of my friends are atheists, and some others believe in different things. Like I have a friend who's a Satanist, and she got me into Satanism too, because like when I was a Christian, I feel like everybody thinks about it this way. Satanism is not at all worship of the devil, and I wish more people would do research on the fact that it's not.
Real quick, I'm sorry, atheistic preacher, is this your weekend or my weekend for no degree?
You can have this weekend.
I was just gonna leave him at a random park from Friday to Sunday, and just have you pick him up from the
No,
park
it's okay.
Sunday.
I need a break. All yours.
All right, well,
No, no.
I'm gonna
I've
go over to his live and give him a baby bottle, and hopefully he'll go to sleep. He's actually soiled himself 6 times today.
I saw part of his live earlier this morning, and what a wreck. It
Did you
was
did you
crazy.
watch him lose again yesterday, 91% to 9?
I did not. I was unfortunately training somebody at work, but it's on YouTube, I think, so it's on my watch list. I
Yeah, I need
can't
them to
wait.
delete that. I need them to delete that VOD after he can edit it, because I got a banana on my main account. Sorry for interrupting you, by the way, Cha Cha Roast. Completely agree with everything you're saying. And sorry, atheistic preacher and I are just having a sidebar. But I will let you drop me down, and I'll be back later.
All right, thank you. Talk to you later,
Love you,
Forrest.
brother.
All right, have a good
Yes,
day.
sir.
Bye.
Sorry
So,
about that, Chacha. Yeah,
oh no, you're
we
you're
both
so
just
good.
debated the same person a few weeks ago, and that guy has just been coming out
Is
with
it
all
like a
these
Christian?
perfect. Yeah, his name is
Yeah.
no degree required on here, and we both had debates with him a couple weeks ago, and he's been relentlessly slandering us, what we said on our what we said in the debates, lying about what we said, and making up weird shit. Now it's kind of funny and sad at the same time, you know.
Yeah. I just a couple days ago, um I guess I could put it as like a popped my live joining cherry because I found this live come across my For You page and it said, if you're not a Catholic, you're wrong, be Catholic. And I was like, oh my God. So I joined it and I was like, because all the people there were like 4 people talking on the live and they were all Catholics. So I asked to join. He was like, yeah, go ahead. And I got on there and they asked me if I was 18 and they asked me what my religion was. And I was like, yeah, I'm 18 and like I'm a pagan and stuff like that. And they kept telling me that my gods were false prophets and that they were fallen angels and all this and all that. And I just kept like, it sounded like they were pulling stuff out of their asses. Like they were just throwing around random Bible verses. And I was like, do you guys have any proof of your religion other than that Bible? And they were like, yeah, there were letters written by the apostles. And I was like, have you seen the letters? He was like, no, it talks about the letters in the Bible. And I was like, okay. So, circling back to what I just asked you, is there any other proof besides the book that you guys probably have in your hand right now that your religion is truthful? And then they just kept pulling out more Bible verses about how, like, their God was the only true God and that anybody else was, like, they just kept repeating themselves over and over again.
Yeah, it's a
And
very
it was really
circular
funny.
based
Oh,
type of
yeah.
logic thinking.
Oh,
You
yeah.
ever see that what is it, that meme that people have where people take that electrical outlet, you know, the extension cord that has the many
Yeah, and then
plugs,
just
and then
plug
they
it back
plug it
into the
into
extender.
itself, and they're like, that this is
Yeah.
this argument. Like, it's like you know, it doesn't actually power itself because you need something
Yeah.
external to help get us to where we need to be. And yet it just, for lots of people, it seems that just goes over their head, and they're like, but I plugged it in, so what's the issue?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It
like
was
an echo chamber.
so, I was like sitting there laughing, trying to be like silent while laughing because I didn't want to seem disrespectful. Because I honestly, genuinely wanted to hear their point of views as to why they believed what they believed. And I was listening to them, but every time I tried to talk about why I believed what I believed, they would cut me off and pull out different like scripture. And I remember one time I asked at like one point in the live if they did worship Mary. And this guy, which his name was like Saint Robert or something like that, he went on a 1-hour tangent about how Jesus couldn't have come out of an unclean person and that God deemed Mary clean. And he kept saying, if you're clean, you're sinless, and if you're sinless, you're holy.
Oh
And then he
yes,
was like quizzing me.
I've heard that before too.
Yeah,
But wouldn't that have to make Mary's mother also sinless and holy,
yeah.
and
And
so on
somebody
and
in the
so
comments
forth?
asked that question. And he's like, that's a really good question to ask. When she was born, obviously she wasn't sinless, but God gave her grace. She was full of grace. And if she's full of grace, that makes her clean and sinless and this, that. And I was like, so you just told me like 30-ish minutes ago that there wasn't another person in the world as clean and sinless as God or Jesus, the personification of God, whatever. That nobody could be like him, nobody could be perfect. And now you're telling me that God graced Mary with purity. just so that she could birth your son? It just doesn't make sense to me how there's two clean and pureless people stated in the Bible, yet nobody could even come close
Yeah.
to God himself.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that I feel that if you really zoomed in on, it just doesn't make sense when it comes to the Bible, and I think that you can find that for lots of different religious texts.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to thank you for your conversation. I'm gonna see if we can maybe get a Christian to come on for the remainder time I got left. Otherwise, I'll probably head off here pretty soon because I've got dinner plans soon. But I enjoyed talking with you. I'm gonna
Yeah,
send you a
no, for
follow.
sure.
Yeah, well, you can
I
come
followed you
back
too.
anytime. All right.
Thank
awesome.
you. Yeah.
All right, take
Have
care.
a great day.
You as well. See, that's a great conversation. I wish more people could engage like that when I ask them things like, well, how do we validate your religious practices and your beliefs? What is the reasoning behind that? And look at how easily she just explained it and acknowledged when it did just end up getting to the point of faith in that one certain area. But when it comes to things like Islam and Christianity and stuff like that, where the answer is it's true and you must accept it because the whole point of these religions is they want to convert you. Islam has a huge, long, violent, and bloody history of forced conversions and taking over territories and forcing conversions. But same thing with Christianity as well. And even in the United States, while we don't really see too much of, wars, religious wars and stuff like that happening, we do hear a lot of religious abuse. I've read some articles even here in the States of Islamic parents trying to do honor killings, and it's horrific just because their kids don't want to follow that belief, or want to marry somebody else, or want to go to college, God forbid. And then in Christianity, there are parents that abuse their kids, abuse their spouses, and think that they can because they're justified with the Bible. So, let's see. Hey, Greg, if I let you up, are you going to actually have a conversation, or are you just going to crash out like yesterday? I mean, no one is forcing you to follow the Bible. Free will exists. Well, if the Bible is true, then no, free will does not exist. There is no free will in the Bible, so... Because you crashed out yesterday, Greg, so I'm not going to bring you up if you're just going to cry and scream again. But if you want to actually have a conversation, I'm definitely down for that. So how can we tell that the Bible is true? The Bible is claimed to be the Word of God. How do we know that that is indeed the case? When people say, this is what God wants you to know about Him, this is what God wants you to follow, because this is the law He gives, how do we know that that's true? Yeah, Greg, go to my YouTube. It's right here, The Atheistic Preacher. Go to my YouTube and watch it, and you'll see that I never muted you. Never once. So, don't lie. How does it not exist if the Bible is true? Because the Bible, free will, the ability to make your own choices and decisions. No, free will is the ability to make decisions without forced outer influence. It's a big difference. The ability for choice itself is not necessarily free will.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm alright. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for asking.
No problem. Are you a Christian or a Bible believer?
I am not very religious, but I have respect for the Bible.
You have respect for certain parts of the Bible or all of it?
There are certain parts of the Bible which are actually comical in some parts. Some parts of the Bible are outright comical, but some parts of the Bible are good.
And some parts are bad, don't you agree?
Some parts not so good, yes.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. I'm looking mostly just to talk to people who believe the Bible is true right now. I don't
They
have too
just
much
want to
time
bash
left.
the
So.
Bible. That's all you are looking to do. Bash the Bible. Is that what
No,
you want to do?
no.
I
I
mean,
want to spark
if that
critical thinking.
otherwise you would talk to me. If you just all you want to do is bash the Bible, then you have to find somebody else to do that. I understand. But if you want to talk you want to learn
I want to
something,
spark
you
critical
want to
thinking.
learn
So
something out of this conversation, you should talk to me. But otherwise, I understand that you just want to wallow in your own fears.
all right.
That's fine for
Well,
me. It's not my problem.
thank
It's
you
your
for
problem.
your incorrect assumptions about me. If they make you feel smart, okay, good for you, I guess. But no. No, I too can agree that the Bible has some beautiful teachings in it, and I think that lots of people could get great inspiration from it. I think it can motivate people to do amazing things like get sober. There are many things that I could say to bash the Bible, and there are many things that I could say to promote the things that the Bible says. So if I just wanted to bash it, I wouldn't need to take any guess. I would just go and bash it. Free will is it's impossible to make choices, decision no. I said free will is the ability to make a choice without forced outer influence. For example, if I go to the ice cream shop and I have to choose between strawberry and chocolate ice cream, that's it. It's an internal choice that I'm making of myself, of my preferences, of which one I like. That is, I would say, a quote-unquote free will choice. If I'm walking down the street and I get mugged and a weapon gets pulled out on me and I'm told to hand over my wallet, no cop in their right mind is going to write down that I gave the robber my wallet and money out of my free will. They're going to say it doesn't, the victim handed over their money and the robber took off, and they would go and they would pursue the crime because my free will was not there. There was a forced outer influence that was making me have the choice. So, do you understand? Yeah, me being a non-Christian doesn't prove free will exists. Let's see. Alright. If you are a Christian or a Bible believer, please feel free to hit the request and come on up. If you know any Christians or Bible believers that like having these kind of conversations, go ahead and share the live with them. And we'll see if we can get at least one more conversation in before I gotta go. It does, because the Christian influence didn't work on you. Oh, it did. For the longest time. I was a Christian for almost 20 years, bro. The Christian influence definitely worked on me. I almost died for it one time. Someone pulled a knife out on me and asked me, "Do you believe in Jesus? And if so, I will kill you." And what did I do? In my fear, I prayed to God for the strength to do what I needed to do, and that I would see him soon. And I said yes. And I said, Jesus is my Lord. So, please, don't say that the Christian influence didn't work on me. But again, let's look at the Bible. Let's see what the Bible has to say. When the Bible says that we are the clay, and that God is the potter, and that God creates vessels for good and vessels for destruction, and it says that he creates the wicked even for the day of destruction, when it says that he creates those for his purpose, and that is to glorify himself, when it says that he has mercy on who he has mercy on, and he hardens the heart of those he hardens, when it says that he sends delusions to certain people so they believe lies, when it says that he sends or when Jesus says that he speaks in parables so that certain people will not hear and will not be saved, what else do we conclude from that other than it's all decided for us? God chooses us. It actually says that, and it says it's always God's will, not human will. Whatever God's will be. Your personal experience with a crazy Christian doesn't really prove the free will. I'm sorry, what story with a crazy Christian? What? If it didn't exist, you'd still be a Christian. Everyone would be a Christian. If free will didn't exist, everyone would be a Christian? Why? What logic is that? That makes no sense at all. The one you said threatened you. I said that someone threatened me. I don't know what they were. Because it's forced influence. Yeah, but the thing is, you would have to say that God is forcing everyone to believe. But we know from the Bible that's not true. Because belief, you need faith to believe, and faith is a gift from God. God chooses you, and God gives you the gift of faith, and then you can believe. God makes some vessels for good and some for destruction. He made the wicked for the day of destruction. So, if the Bible is true, we do not have free will. God made some people for bad and some people for good, and all of this has been predestined. You know what? Let's crack open the Bible, shall we? 1 second. Again, Jesus loves y'all. You are not correct with your definition of free will. So let's start with Ephesians chapter 1, and let's go ahead and start in verse 4. Just as he chose us in Christ before the foundation of the world, to be holy and blameless before him in love, he destined us for adoption as his children through Jesus Christ, according to the good pleasure of his will, to the praise of his glorious grace that he freely bestowed on us in the beloved. And then let's go to Romans chapter 9. And let's go ahead and say verse 14. When then are we to say, is there injustice on God's part? By no means. For he says to Moses, I will have mercy on whom I have mercy, and I will have compassion on whom I have compassion. So it depends not on human will or exertion, but on God who shows mercy. For the scripture says to Pharaoh, I have raised you up for this purpose, that I might show my power in you, and that my name may be proclaimed in all the earth. So then he has mercy on whom he chooses, and he hardens the heart of whom he chooses. And then further down in verse 22, it says, what if God, desiring to show his wrath and make known his power, has endured with much patience the objects of wrath that are made for destruction? And what if he has done so in order to make known the riches of his glory for the objects of his mercy, which he has prepared beforehand for glory, including us, whom he has called, not from the Jews, but only also from the Gentiles? So the Bible is very clearly teaching that God decided all this beforehand. Before we were here, God already created us for what our purpose was. And regardless of whether we are good or bad, and again, he decides that, it is to bring him glory. And it is to show himself to the ones that he decided to show mercy to. This is all showing that if the Bible is true, you do not have free will. All right, let's see. Hello.
Hello.
How are you doing?
I'm doing. How are you doing?
Not too bad, not too bad. Are you over 18 and are you a Christian?
I'm 18, not over. But no, I'm not a Christian.
Okay. I'm mostly looking for Christians to talk to, but if you have a question or just want to say a quick thing, you can go for it.
Do want to say a quick thing. You read my mind. Thank you. I'm just saying, the Bible, okay, could be written by anybody. How, like, who? How do we know who was written? Sorry. It could literally just be all bullshit. Every single word, every single page, every single letter could just be bullshit. Because it could be written by anybody. And that's like purple fairies, right? Do you believe in purple fairies? No. Well, why don't you believe in purple fairies? Because 500 people wrote a book on it that said it's true. Well, I've never seen a purple fairy, so I don't believe in purple fairies. You should believe in purple fairies, because if you don't believe in purple fairies, then you're going to the big red fairy that's in hell. It just sounds so dumb. That's my thing. The way that they explain why they believe what they believe is just so stupid. That's all I had to say. I compare it to purple fairies. I don't know. I just thought that I'd say that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. And yeah, no, I completely understand the logic. I feel the same way. I like to bring up the Hunger Games and Game of Thrones and stuff. So I feel the same.
But I'll be in the comments because I would really, really like to see you debate a Christian that's like idiotic. That's all.
Yeah, I've been waiting, but no Christians are coming up today, it seems. But we'll see. Well, thank you.
I guess they're just scared.
I guess so. Yeah.
Thank you for letting me up.
Unfortunately, yeah, no problem. Take care. Unfortunately, it seems like Jesus Loves Y'all doesn't have the ability to go live, so that's unfortunate. But the names are literally written on the pages, dude. Yeah, you realize that like Matthew did not write, like the disciple Matthew did not write Matthew, and same thing for Mark, and the same thing with the disciple Luke did not write Luke, and there's like half of Paul's writings that are attested to see if they're actually forgeries, because a lot of the writing styles are different, lots of contradictions are there. There's a debate over whether Moses was a real guy, so the first 5 books, who were they written by? So the book names, it should give you an idea of who wrote the books. Yeah, or inspired, but we don't know a lot of the authors of the books. We know some, not all the others. Alright, we got a guest. Hello, how are you?
I'm fine. So did you say that Matthew didn't write Matthew?
Hold on, real quick. Are you 18 and are you a Christian or a Bible believer?
I'm 23, I'm a Christian, yeah.
Perfect. So, how can we tell the Bible is true and why should it be followed?
I only came up to talk about Matthew, and that's a bit about the truth about the Gospels, isn't it? So, I mean, you said Matthew didn't write Matthew, so let's talk about it.
Sure, it's widely accepted by the majority of scholarships that have done the work that these Gospels came to decades after the fact, and that we did not have the original writings to confirm that the disciple Matthew wrote this.
So I would recommend keeping up to date with modern scholarship. I mean, that was popular in the 90s, yeah, but I mean, when you look at when you say we don't have the originals, yeah, we don't have anything from the 1st century. What we do have is quotation, and even Bart Ehrman, who you're probably going to go to say, oh, but he said that we don't have. Even he would say in Misquoting Jesus, page 252, we can actually reconstruct the whole New Testament using early church fathers. And what did the early church fathers have? The originals, and yeah, they were written decades after. That's absolutely no problem. It's still in their timeline.
Cool, yeah, I wasn't going to say anything about Bart Ehrman, but nice of you to assume. And yeah, I understand that the church fathers that can put this together do traditionally accredit it to Matthew, but again, without that validation, we cannot say for certain. The dates are not exactly matching. We don't exactly know when Matthew died, and so because of all of this, we cannot say that the disciple Matthew wrote Matthew, hence why the Gospels are labeled anonymous, including Matthew.
None of them are labelled anonymous. And actually, in all the anti-Nicene Creed fathers, they all agree on the authorship. Not one of them disagree. Can you find me any anti-Nicene Creed fathers that disagree on the authorship?
I'm sorry, what was any what?
So before the Nicene Creed, can you find me any of them that disagree on the authorship?
I could get back to you on that for sure.
So where are you getting at they're anonymous then? If no one's disagreeing on the authorship, and even on the ones that we do have, the fragments that we do have, and they all have names on it, where are you getting that they're anonymous?
They have names on it because that's who they're attributed to. That's where the information came from.
Okay, again, so how are you, so where are you getting that it's anonymous? If they're all having, like, their names on it, and everyone agrees on the authorship...
Because we
and
can't say that they wrote it.
Okay, so how are you saying that? But what's your definitive proof?
Well, I mean, the absence of the evidence that we can show that he did. So, can you show me the evidence that Matthew, the disciple, wrote it? Because if you can show me that,
sure.
I'll completely concede.
Yeah, sure. For the apostolic succession, attribution of, and how we record history. In terms of how we record history, Julius Caesar didn't even write in first person, but we know through his contemporaries that he did. Therefore, it's accredited to Julius Caesar.
So you're saying that the church fathers just said that he did it?
No, do you know how our actual apostolic succession works?
Go ahead and explain it.
Okay, so these would have been the disciples' students, and they would have wrote and they would have followed what these people were saying. Even Clement of Rome cites Matthew, and we know that Clement of Rome wrote between 90 AD. Some even say that he wrote during Paul's time. So you're trying to say that, we don't know when they had them, and etc., etc. We know that they had that before the end of the first century. We have so many quotations from the originals as well. This whole anonymous, I don't even know where you're... it's such poor scholarship. It's old scholarship.
Okay, can you give some of the quote-unquote new scholars that would disagree, within the past year?
Yeah, sure. Star Poirier.
Star who?
Star Poirier.
Okay. Anyone else?
From the top of my head, I think Wes Huff would even agree. He's the biggest one at the moment. In terms of new scholars, right now, they don't even talk about the...
just anything within the findings of the scholarships within the past year where we can say, all right, we couldn't say for certain back then in the quote-unquote old scholarship, but now we can say definitely now it was indeed the disciple
Bloomberg.
Matthew.
Oh yeah, sure. Claim Bloomberg, Wes Huff, Star Poirier. What's that other guy who wrote the book, The Reliability of the Gospels? I think he debated Bart Ehrman. Can't remember his name. But if you type in the book, The Reliability of the Gospels, again, he wrote a whole book using all the things that we even have now, and all the church fathers that write and attribute it to them. So the whole even this whole anonymous, it really stands on zero claims.
Sure. All right. So it's my understanding from the scholarship that it was most likely the students of the disciples that wrote this down and not the disciples themselves. If you're saying that these scholars have new data and stuff like that to show for a fact it was the disciples, then I'll go ahead and I'll look into it. But if I don't find that, and my very quick search of it now shows that they're still seen as anonymous, but I'm not above looking it into again, because I understand new things come out all the time, so I'll stay on top of it.
That's just appealing to authority fallacy. So what scholar in particular is making a convincing argument that has convinced you?
Well, that's what I just said, my real quick look over of it right now, but I will do a deeper dive of it right now, or I'll do a deeper dive of it with the scholars that you mentioned just now that supposedly have this new evidence that shows that the Gospels are not anonymous. I can't wait to see the new evidence that has come out recently.
Nobody said new evidence. I'm saying this is really old. This was reviewed back in the 90s.
Oh, well, I mean, I asked you for within the past year the new evidence and data that came out that supports that the Gospels are not anonymous.
And I said nobody even debates that anymore because, like I said, it's old scholarship. This is something that lived and died with. Nobody uses the.
You know what, let me see. I know that Sir is extremely more knowledgeable than I am.
Yeah.
Sir,
Have
am
you
I
heard
am
of?
I incorrect that the
No, you're
scholar?
not incorrect. Have you heard of
Okay.
Guest? Have you heard of Richard Bauckham?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Richard Bauckham's like one of the scholars that you could appeal to that argue that the Gospels are based on eyewitness testimony, and that he kind of argues for traditional authorship, and he even recognizes in his books that he's presenting a minority position, that he's arguing against the majority within scholarship.
Yeah, and
So
me and you like have spoken about it a few times, but I was asking him because he was the one talking about it, and then when I came up, he was like, "Well, my computer on a quick look said so." But me and you have spoken about it before, and I know that you know your stuff. He doesn't, and that's why I'm asking him, like, where's he
Yeah,
getting
yeah.
this
My
from?
position was correct, and yours was incorrect
Okay,
when I
so
said that it is the majority scholarly position that the Gospels are anonymous, and you said that's wrong. So
no, I said it's a
you're saying I don't know my
future
stuff, and yet I
author.
said the correct thing, and you're disagreeing with me.
Yeah. So what makes you think it's correct?
So if you think that Sir is really knowledgeable about his stuff, and he's saying I'm right here, then why don't we talk about how your position of how you believe that we can know that the Gospels are not anonymous?
Yeah, I
well,
told you before.
I don't think there's anything wrong with him googling it to see if if he's correct, or like how deep does he have to go before being justified in saying this is what scholarship believes. I mean, if you do a quick Google search and it says that that's the majority position, and he says that's the majority position, I think that's enough to conclude that. Why does he have to do something beyond that?
Well, no, because if you're going to make a claim, you're going to have justification. If he's making a claim against Christianity, he's making a whole live about it because he's
But that
butthurt about
is
Christianity, then he
wait, that
needs
is
to.
justification. That is justification for the claim that scholars recognize the Gospels are anonymous. The Google search that brings up those results is justification for that claim.
No, it's not justification if he's saying, "Oh, well, all of my most scholars disagree," and I'm saying, actually, no, that's outdated scholarship. So when I'm bringing up new scholars that don't agree, I'm saying it's outdated scholarship. Like even
Uh,
you know, because you even read scholars. None of them in modern day scholarship are talking about the anonymity.
that's not true at all. I mean, Michael Koch just had a book that came out, I think, last year about the Gospel of Matthew and the traditions that led to the name. And even he goes through like a theory about how that name came to be, where he recognizes that it originally circulated anonymous. This is like the scholars that argue against this position are in the extreme minority. I mean, the overwhelming majority of critical scholars recognize that the Gospels originally circulated anonymously, and the names probably weren't attached until after they started getting collected in codexes. Before that, they circulated anonymously. So that's not even a controversial position.
So what was the book called? And then we'll get on to the circulation. But again, do you even know the manuscript edition?
It's yeah. Well, we can talk about the manuscript tradition in a second. The name of the book is it's Michael Koch. It's like Matthew tax collector to gospel writer or something like that. I got the book in my PDF files here. I can look it up, but it's
And this was released last year.
within the last couple of years. Yeah,
We were talking about it in the last year. You said last year.
I said I think it was last year. Might have been 2 years ago. I don't know the exact date, but it's been pretty recently.
Wait, so it's Michael Cox.
Michael Koch. It's not the Gospel in the Margins. That's the one about Mark. He released one about Matthew just recently. It's called like Tax Collector to Gospel Writer or something like that.
Okay, tax collector. Tax
Just
collector.
just Michael Koch. Just it's KOK. Michael Koch. KOK.
But also, like, when you say the majority of them find them anonymous, this is also like you don't even have a quantity for it.
Yeah, I mean, look, the people that are arguing for your position, like Richard Buckham, even acknowledge in the book that they're representing the minority position. Why would they acknowledge that if that wasn't the minority position?
What would you define as a minority position?
Meaning they're arguing against the majority of scholars. It's a smaller position. I'm not saying it's like nobody holds that position. It's just that the people that hold that position are in the minority.
Okay, and then when it comes to manuscript edition, like who's actually like, and when we look at apostolic succession, who's still holding to like it's anonymous?
Yeah, so the apostolic succession, there's some issues with that. So For one, the tradition that comes from Matthew and Mark is going to be based primarily on Papias. So it's basically going to come down to how reliable you think Papias is and what gospels or books you think Papias is talking about. That's going to be the issue with the apostolic succession, so to speak. And secondly, the manuscript tradition, all the manuscripts we have that we would have the page available where the titles would be shown, all those manuscripts post-date when these gospels would have gotten their titles anyway. Because all those manuscripts that contain that page are going to be after Irenaeus. And Irenaeus already quotes from the gospels and says that those are the names attached to them, and that's going to be the first person that does that.
Wait, so did you just say Aeneas already has the name attached to them?
Yeah, Irenaeus, when he quotes from like Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, he quotes from them by name and quotes from them directly. So, and that's in 180. So by the time that's going on, it's clear that these names are attached to them, the names that are attached to the Gospels we have now. That's in 180. With people before that, it's less clear. For example, Justin Martyr quotes from the three synoptics, Mark, Matthew, and Luke. And when he quotes from them, he calls members of the apostles. Like, what's he talking about there, right? There's also some evidence that he might have the Gospel of James with him and is calling that members of the apostles. Then there's the issue of like Ignatius quotes, it's either Ignatius or Polycarp, I can't remember which one, quotes from the Gospel of Matthew and calls it the Gospel of Jesus Christ. What's he talking about there, right? And then we have like Papias that says Matthew composed the Gospel in Hebrew and then it was translated to Greek, and that Mark composed the Gospel based on Peter's teachings and sermons. And those two things don't really match the Gospels we have. So what is Papias talking about? I mean, it seems to be that what's actually going on here is that someone was trying to find apostles to attach names to these books, and they attached those names to the books based on what Papias said about different books.
Yeah, so there was a few things, but with Justin Martin, when you were saying that he quotes the memoirs of the Gospels, yeah, they were all held as one, as a collective at one point as well. So he could have just been holding to that one. There's no problem with that. I think he even does quote even uses Matthew names at one point, but I'm not sure because I haven't read all of.
No, he uses he quotes from the Gospel of Mark, and he says memoirs of the apostles or memoirs of him after talking about Peter. So the kind of idea there is that he's aware of the tradition that goes back to Peter, but that's in 150, and still he doesn't call it the Gospel of Mark.
Yeah, he would have just called them the memoirs, but again, he could have held to a collective because we know at one point they were just called the Gospel, and it was all just one, and then other people would have had it separate.
Yeah, so what?
So that's why he would have referred to them as the memoirs, or even as a singular like Gospel.
The point is that the half dozen or so sources we have that quote from them before Irenaeus doesn't call them Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. So the tradition is really weak to say those were the names originally attached to them. And we also have background knowledge. I mean, the other thing, we have background knowledge in the 2nd century of books circulating that have names attached to them by apostles that didn't write them. So we have background knowledge that Christians were doing this. We have like the Gospel of Peter, the Gospel of Philip, the Gospel of Thomas, etc. We know, and you would agree, that the apostles didn't write those books. So we have background knowledge that was going on and taking place in the 2nd century.
Yeah, and we know that, and even if but when we're talking about the Gospels, there's no like disagreements on who wrote them in the early church fathers. They didn't say, "Oh, this person wrote it," or "This person wrote it." They all anonymously agree. So how can you say it's anonymous?
Well, if you mean after Irenaeus, you're right on most accounts, but there are a few exceptions. Are you aware of like the anti-Marcionite prologue?
Yeah, anti-Marcion. No, I'm not actually.
So the anti-Marcionite prologue was a prologue attached to all 4 Gospels, and this was probably like 3rd or 4th century. And one of the prologues, the prologue to John, says John was written by Papias when the elder John dictated the Gospel to him. Now, the elder John is not John the Apostle; it's a different John. And Eusebius clears this up in church history that there are actually 2 Johns in Ephesus. There was the Apostle John and the Elder John. And it seems to be that the Elder John was someone that lived a little bit later, because when Papias talks about where he gets his tradition from, he says there was a John that I can't remember exactly how he words it, a John that said, and then a John that was saying. So the John the Elder is the one that's still alive, and the John the Apostle has passed away.
Who wrote this?
That's when Eusebius quotes Papias.
Eusebius quotes Papias.
Yeah, and Papias says, he talks about a John the Elder and a John the Apostle, and Eusebius says they're two different Johns. I actually have a video about this on my page.
Actually, we spoke about this before, but actually, I think there's even an argument to say there's still one person.
Well, Eusebius doesn't think so, and there's other church fathers that don't think so as well. I'd have to look. I think Jerome agrees with Eusebius, and there's somebody else as well. But it's clear. To me, it's clear Papias is talking about two different Johns, because he seems to indicate one John's alive and one John's dead. Because he groups a John with this guy Ariston and says those are the ones that are saying. And then before that, the John that's listed with Matthew and Philip and like the other apostles, he says that John had said. So it seems like he's saying these other apostles have passed away, but these two are alive, the elder John and this guy named Ariston.
So if I go to New Advent, what chapter is this?
What chapter for Eusebius?
Yeah.
I mean, one thing I would look up, just look up fragments of Papias. You can see all the quotations from church fathers there. There's a translation of all the quotations from Papias. I don't know what chapter it is in church history. I mean, you'd have to piece together the different quotes from Eusebius when he talks about Papias. And I also have a video of it on my page that goes over kind of the history of Papias. Why I don't think he's reliable.
So if I type in John, so the ones there's 12 different Johns. So I kind of need a source here.
What do you mean there's 12 different Johns? What are you asking?
So there's 12 times he mentions John in Papias fragments. If we're gonna go through this and we're gonna see if they're what the early church fathers believed, I'm gonna need a source. And
Are you trying to see Eusebius's sort of breakdown of it, or are you trying to find the actual quote from Papias?
Yeah, the actual quote from Papias that Eusebius brought up.
Just type in Ariston. Ariston. It's in that quotation. It's where Papias relays where he gets his information from.
And is this in? So am I going to Eusebius's work or Papias? Papias?
We don't have Papias's work. All we have are people quoting from him.
The fragments.
No, the fragments are the quotations we have. We don't actually have the extant work. All we have is someone's taken the quotes from Eusebius and the quotes from Irenaeus when they quote Papias and put it in a collection called the Fragments of Papias.
Okay, so which Eusebius am I going to? Church History, Life of
Church History.
Church History. What chapter?
Yeah. I don't know. I'd have to look it up.
Would you mind looking it up?
Yeah, hold on.
I just want to thank everyone for being here. I want to thank User Answer for spending their time. Lots of names are being dropped, lots of different chapters and numbers. I do post my lives on YouTube, so if you missed any of it and you want to go back and hear it, maybe you missed a name or you wanted to go back and hear something again, the information will be there. I know that I'm going to go back and take down some notes because there's a lot of information coming out, and I think that that's great. I'm all for promoting information sharing and education. Alexis, while we're waiting for our guest to come back, Alexis, go ahead and read Romans 9:14 through 18, and then verses 22 through 24, and then go to Ephesians chapter 1, and verses 4 through 6. And that'll answer how, if the Bible is true, we don't have free will.
Okay, it's Church History, Book 3, Chapter 39, Paragraph 4.
Okay, give me 1 second. Book 3, chapter 39.
Yeah, Paragraph 4. Now, that's when he quotes Papias. Let me find when he sort of recaps how there's two different Johns. Hold on.
But Papias himself, in the preface to his discourse, by no means declares that he was himself a hero and an eyewitness of the Holy Apostles, but he shows by the words which he uses that he received the doctrines of faith from those who were their friends. He says, "But I shall not hesitate also to put down for you, along with my interpretations, whatsoever things I have at any time learned carefully from the elders, and carefully remembered, guaranteeing their truth. For I did not, like the multitude, take pleasure in those that speak much, but in those that teach the truth, not in those that relate to strange commandments, but in those that deliver the commandments given to the Lord, given by the Lord to faith, and springing from the truth itself. If then anyone came who had been a follower of the elders, I questioned him in regard to the words of the elders, what Andrew or what Peter said, or was said by Philip or Thomas or by James or John or by Matthew or by any of the disciples of the Lord, and what were things Ariston and the prepositor John and the disciple of the Lord say. For I did not think that was to be gotten from the books would profit me as much as what came from the living and the abiding voice."
Then now, if you want to read the next two paragraphs, you can. But paragraph 6, he starts talking about how there's two tombs in Ephesus, and he talks about how there's two different Johns.
But in
Keep reading. If you want.
It was worthwhile observing that here that the name John is twice immuted by him. The first one he mentions is connection with Peter and James and Matthew and the rest of the apostles, clearly meaning the evangelists. But the other John he mentions after an interval and place among him others outside of the numbers of the apostles, putting Ariston before him, and he directly calls him presbyter. And this shows that the statement of those is true, who say that that there are two persons in Asia that bore the same name, and that there are two tombs in Ephesus, each of which, even to the present day, is called John. It is important to notice this, for it is probable that it was the second, if one willing to admit that it was the first that saw the revelation which ascribed the name John.
Yeah. Okay, so let's recap. So that was a lot of information, but let me just recap. So Papias says there's a guy named John. He mentions them in reference to Matthew and the other apostles. Then he mentions a second John, which he calls the presbyter, right? Or the preacher. And he links that in association with this guy Ariston. Okay? Eusebius says there's two Johns in Ephesus. There's John the elder and John the apostle, and that there are two different Johns, and that the second John, John the elder, is the one that wrote Revelation, and that the first John is the John that wrote the Gospel of John. Okay? Now, this gets interesting because the Anti-Marcionite prologue says that the person that wrote the Gospel of John was John the Elder, and that he dictated it to Papias. So I think, and I think this is kind of seems to be the case, that the church is confused about which John taught Polycarp and Ignatius. And when they talk about a John teaching these guys, they're talking about the elder John. Because the elder John seems to be the one that's alive while Papias is alive, not the apostle John. And anyway, to get back to your original question, that is a competing authorship to the Gospel of John. So that's one example. We have another competing authorship to the Gospel of John too, but I'll let you respond to that first.
Yeah, no, so when it comes to being an elder, like I know that Eusebius is trying to say there's two people, but you can be considered an elder and still be the same person. And if we read this back again, he's trying to say that there's two different Johns in verse, I think it's 6, isn't it? The short statement is true that who say that there were two persons in Asia that bore the same name, and that were in two tombs in Euphrates, each of which even the present day is called John. It is important to notice this. But I wouldn't say that what do you mean like the elder like wrote the Gospel of John? Because when we read John, you can see that when he's writing before the destruction of the Second Temple, he's writing in present tense. Like most of the buildings are still there.
Wait, what are you asking now?
Yeah, so in John chapter 5, verse 1 and 2, when he's talking about a Pacific building that was actually destroyed, he's writing that in present tense, like it's still there. And that's an argument for, what's it called? For it being written before the destruction of the Second Temple. So when you're trying to say that an elder John wrote that, and it's not the same John of the Apostle, what's your argument for that?
No, I'm saying you said that there's no competing authors. There are. This is one example. There's, according to the Anti-Marcionite prologue, the book was written by John the Elder. I'm bringing up all this Papias and Eusebius stuff to show you that there's a church tradition that says John the Elder and John the Apostle aren't the same John.
Yeah, no, there is a tradition to say that. Like I'm not disputing that.
Yeah, and there's a tradition that John the Elder is the one that wrote the Gospel of John, that he dictated it to Papias.
Yeah, so what's the evidence that he wrote it?
What you asked? Wait, now
Because
we're moving on.
dictating isn't saying that he wrote it.
Now we're moving on to a different topic. Okay, you said there's no competing authorships to any of the Gospels. I just gave you one example. Among the church, there's a competing author to John. There's John the Elder and John the Apostle.
Yeah, but saying dictating doesn't mean that he wrote it.
What are you talking about?
When you're saying Papias said that John the Elder dictated the Gospel of John, that doesn't mean he wrote it. That doesn't mean like Papias believed that John the Elder wrote it.
You think John the Elder just had the whole thing memorized? What are you saying?
You're trying to say that he dictated it to him. That doesn't mean he
Yeah,
wrote it.
that means that Papias is recording what the Elder John said.
Yeah, but so what was Papias like? What's the context to this then?
It's in the Anti-Marcionite prologue. This is a prologue that was before the four Gospels, that circulated in some manuscripts in the early church.
So the anti-Marcion prologue, like I'm pretty sure he's considered a heretic, isn't he?
No, it's not from Marcion. It's the Anti-Marcionite prologue.
Oh, so like before he
No,
wrote
it's
his own gospel.
no. It's people writing against Marcion. It's attached to the four Gospels. It's called the Anti-Marcionite prologue. It gives a brief description about who wrote each Gospel.
Okay, yeah.
Yep. Okay. So, all right. So, do you understand? Do you understand now? There's a different tradition about who wrote John. There's not just one tradition.
No, because I'm still not getting where you get like John the Elder wrote it.
That's what it says in the Anti-Marcionite prologue. You just asked for a different tradition. I'm not saying John the Elder actually wrote the book. I don't think anyone has any clue who wrote this book. I think everybody's just guessing. But the point is that there's a tradition that there's another person that wrote the Gospel of John, not John the Apostle or John son of Zebedee, but John the Elder.
But where you get that there's a different tradition, because you said Papias says that he dictated it to him.
Yeah.
So that's not writing it.
What do you mean that's not writing? Of course it is.
So if I'm dictating something to you, is that you writing? Like, is that me writing it?
Yes, that's saying, look, Papias is getting the gospel from John the Elder. That John the Elder is giving him the information that's being composed inside the Gospel of John.
Yeah, that's fine. He could have gave him the information inside the Gospel of John. I'm not like refuting that.
Okay, that's where that talking about the composition of the book. Papias is it's because the Anti-Marcionite prologue is telling us who wrote each book. It's saying Mark wrote Mark, Matthew wrote Mark, Luke wrote Luke, etc. And then when it gets to John, it says John was written by Papias when John the Elder dictated the book to him.
Oh, so you're trying to say Papias wrote it?
Papias, yeah, you could say Papias was a scribe or whatever. But I don't think, listen, just to be clear, I think this is all bullshit. I don't think anybody knows who wrote it. I'm saying, you said there's no competing tradition for John, son of Zebedee. There is. There's John the Elder dictating it to Papias. That's a different tradition.
Okay, well, I'll look into that when he says he's like dictating it. Where does he say this? In
It's
the
in the
Anti-Marcion?
it's in the Papias doesn't say it directly. It's the anti-Marcionite prologue.
Is that canon in the church?
Well, what do you mean by canon? It's from the church.
Yeah, but is it like canon, like in the church? Like, is it like not a forgery? Is what I'm trying to say.
No, it's not a forgery.
Oh,
I can't
okay.
remember what area it's from. I think it's from Syria, but I could be wrong. But it's attached to, it's the prologue to the four Gospels. Okay, it's called the Anti-Marcionite prologue. Then there's a third tradition. Okay, with John. Now you're going to call these people heretics, but it's still a competing author to John. There's this group called the Allegoi that Eusebius talks about. This says John was written by this guy Cerinthus. Okay, which was a heretic. So there were different people saying different people wrote this book, this Gospel of John. Okay? Now, there's a different competing author for the Gospel of Luke as well. There's dispute amongst the Marcionites and the church about whether or not the book was originally Marcion's and the church edited it, or the other way around. So that's two authors for the Gospel of Luke as well. Two competing authors.
Yeah, no, but I'm talking from canonization from within the apostolic succession. And you brought a good point with Papias that I'll look into, but the CBJ guys are the heretics. But I would agree there is a different tradition.
I'm not talking about CBJ. I don't actually think Marcion wrote Luke before Luke. I'm just saying, you asked for competing authors. I'm just saying there are some.
Oh yeah, no, but I'm talking about apostolic succession, so not the heretics.
Well, why would I care whether they're part of your church or not? You asked for competing authors.
Yeah, but the church is what I would hold canon, so I wouldn't hold anything else canon.
Yeah, no, I get that. That's like, yeah, I'm not doing an internal critique. You're asking for examples of different competing authors for these books. So those would be some examples. Now, your question about the internal evidence for John writing John. Well, I think you've brought up this building thing before, I think, because now I think I know who you are. You're like the, isn't your other username like Luke something? Luke 2451
Yeah,
or something?
it's lovely, but I got banned on that account for like 7 days.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I can't remember the argument for the building thing, but there's just so many reasons to not think John wrote John. For one, it's not the kind of thing that we would expect a fisherman to write. I mean, the person was aware of like complex Greek literature at the time. Whoever wrote it, it was someone that was probably a part of some highly literate functioning society that were writing to other highly literate Greeks. That wouldn't be someone that would describe a fisherman. This guy would have had a lifetime education. Secondly, whenever the beloved disciple is mentioned in the gospel, there's instances where the beloved disciple is mentioned and where the other gospels say John isn't present, such as the empty tomb, right? And in the Gospel of John, the beloved disciple is present at the empty tomb, but yet in the Synoptics, John's not present at the empty tomb. That would be one example. And the crucifixion, right? In the Gospel of John, the beloved disciple is present at the crucifixion, but yet he's not present in the Synoptics, right? So to me, I think the beloved disciple is just supposed to be an omniscient narrator. I don't even think it's a real person. It's just an omniscient narrator that can like see this stuff.
Yeah, you can just hold to literary spotlighting when John's focusing on himself. That would be literary spotlighting. Like to say that because the other two don't mention him, that means he wasn't there. That doesn't mean like he wasn't there at all.
Yeah, I just think it would raise the probability he wasn't.
I mean, yeah, you can definitely question it, but I would hold to literary spotlighting.
And also the chapter in John the chapter 21 that mentions, we know his testimony is true. I think it's 21:23 or 21:20 something or other. A lot of people think that chapter was added to John. I don't know if you know that.
Yeah, I've heard of that, but I've always held that because the church need to confirm. So Peter would have had to confirm all that he read before they were to rewrite it, and give it out, or release it in sermons.
Well, the church has all kinds of interpolations and stuff in the gospel, or in the New Testament. I mean, they have an entire ending of Mark that's not original added to the book. So,
Are you referring to what's it called? Chapter 16, verse 9 onwards.
yeah, 9 through 20. Yep.
But we have quotations from verse 19, like a decade, not even less
You
than
have
less than a
Irenaeus.
century. Sorry.
Irenaeus quotes. Yeah, it might be 19. I thought it was 17, but yeah, Irenaeus quotes verse 17 or 19. But I'm not saying that it was written in the first century, or sorry, that it was written in like the 5th century or something. It's clearly still like sometime in the 2nd century where this ending was added. But we know that it's not original to the text because we've got different alternative endings from 9 through 20, and we have in the two earliest codexes, the Codex Sinaiticus and the Codex Vaticanus. Those two don't have the ending of Mark; it just ends at verse 8. And then we have a competing ending in the Codex Bobonesis that has a completely different ending. That's not the ending that's in all the manuscripts after that. So, in order for that to originally be a part of Mark, someone would have had to remove 9 through 20, added it to the published the two earliest versions of Mark without 9 through 20, and then someone else add a different ending before the original ending was re-added later. That just seems way less likely than someone adding on to verse 8.
What was the first called? No, the Bible called that added the other ending.
Codex Bobonesis.
Is it part of the first 9 canon Bibles?
Is a part of what? Sorry.
The first 9 canon.
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. Anyway, preacher, do you want me up here for anything else?
No, actually, I'm actually gonna have to head out to dinner there pretty soon. But I think that you guys gave out a lot of information, and thank you, sir, for coming up because you are definitely more knowledgeable in this subject than I am, and I don't want to give any incorrect information. So, thanks for coming up
Yeah.
and clearing all that. And user, I hope that you got some of the answers to the questions that you were looking for too.
Yeah, I appreciate you letting me ramble. This is a topic I'm fascinated about, so I like talking about it.
Yeah, awesome. You're welcome anytime. Thank you.
All right.
So what is it called? Codex.
It's Codex Bobonesis.
Boboneus. How do you spell that? Oh, found it.
Yep. It has a
And-
different ending. It's a little bit different than 9 through 20. It's like a condensed ending.
And like I said earlier, user, I do post my lives to my YouTube, so if there's anything that you felt you missed, or any names of anybody, because I know that I missed some, you can go back, re-listen to it, and catch all that information again, so that you haven't missed anything.
You can reach out to me too if you ever want to know. I mean, I'm happy to send you the information as well. So
Yeah, I've got you on my other account. I get unbanned on Wednesday.
okay, we can, I mean, I know who you are. You go live from time to time, so I can always jump on there and talk to you too if you send me an invite or whatever.
I'll send you an invite soon. I got bananaed for debating whether the Catholic Church would allow gay marriage.
Yeah.
I didn't even say like anything nasty. I just said like whether or not they'll allow it.
Are you a Catholic?
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Well, technically catechized, but
Gotcha. Okay. All right, preacher. Thanks for having me up.
Thank you for being here, sir. And thank you for your time as well, user. I'm going to go ahead and let both of you go. I've got to get headed off to dinner. So thank you, everyone, for being here. And I hope that